They say your wedding day is the happiest moment of your life. What they don't mention is that it can also be the day everything you believed in collapses while you stand there in white silk, watching your world fall apart. My name is Amy, and this is the story of how I discovered that the two people I trusted most had been deceiving me for months. But more importantly, it's about what I chose to do next in action so unexpected, so shattering, that it left an entire room stunned. Some call it revenge. I call it justice. Just 3 months ago, I thought I had life figured out. At 26, I was working as a kindergarten teacher in our small town of Millbrook. Every morning, I woke in the cozy apartment I shared with my fiancé, Maverick, and felt that warm sense of contentment. We had been together for years, engaged for one, and our wedding date was set for June 15th. A perfect summer day for what I thought would be a perfect wedding. Maverick worked in his father's construction company, tall, broad-shouldered, with sandy brown hair and green eyes that crinkled when he smiled. He was admired by everyone. People often said we were the golden couple. "You're so lucky, Amy," the mothers of my students would tell me, pointing at the modest yet beautiful diamond ring on my finger, the one Maverick had spent 8 months saving for. I believed them. I believed in us. My maid of honor was Penelope, my best friend since childhood. She had long black hair that somehow always looked flawless, and a laugh that could fill any room. Men noticed her, but she was the person who stood by me through everything, holding my hand through exams, comforting me when my grandmother passed away, and celebrating every milestone. When Maverick proposed, she was the first person I called. "My God, Amy," she'd screamed, "I'm so happy for you. This will be the most beautiful wedding ever." She threw herself into planning with full enthusiasm, helping me choose Riverside Manor with its gardens and Victorian charm, tasting cakes, picking flowers, and addressing invitations in her neat handwriting. "You deserve this happiness," she told me once, squeezing my hand. "Maverick is lucky to have you." I trusted her completely. I trusted them both. The weeks before the wedding passed in a blur of fittings, last-minute details, and mounting excitement. My family was overjoyed. Mom teared up every time she looked at my dress. Dad practiced his speech in secret, and my younger brother Danny couldn't wait for the big day. Even my great-aunt Rose flew in at 82, sharp as ever, despite her years. Married to my late great-uncle for 6 decades, she had a way of looking at you as if she saw right into your heart. "Marriage isn't about the wedding day, sweetheart," she told me the night before, holding my hands with her weathered fingers. "It's about every day afterwards, choosing each other when it's difficult, when the butterflies fade, when life gets real. Make sure you're marrying someone who will choose you back." I nodded, certain I understood. Maverick and I had endured challenges before his father's heart attack, my long job search, the stress of saving for a home. We felt steady, prepared. That night I fell asleep smiling, dreaming of walking down the aisle, toward my future. June 15th arrived bright and clear, with a gentle breeze softening the summer heat. I woke in my childhood bedroom, where I had stayed the night as tradition dictated. Sunlight streamed through lace curtains my mom hung when I was 12. For a moment, I felt like a little girl, again safe, loved, and full of dreams. Then, I remembered. Today was my wedding day. The house was already full of activity. Mom was in the kitchen, likely cooking enough food for a small army. Dad was on the phone, using that firm tone he reserved for problem-solving. Danny was in the shower, singing off-key. As always, I stretched, feeling surprisingly calm. All the planning was complete, every decision made. Today, my only task was to arrive and marry the man I loved. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Maverick. "Good morning, beautiful. Can't wait to see you at the altar. Love you." I smiled and replied, "Love you, too. See you soon, husband." Another notification appeared, this one from Penelope. "Wedding day. I'm so excited. I barely slept, getting my hair done now, then heading over to help you. This is going to be perfect." The morning moved quickly in a blur of hair curlers, makeup brushes, and laughter. The photographer arrived at 10 o'clock, capturing every detail as my bridesmaids Penelope, my cousin Emma, and Maverick's sister Katie helped me transform from sleepy Amy into a bride. My dress was exactly what I had dreamed of, simple but elegant, with lace sleeves and a flowing skirt that made me feel like royalty. Looking in the mirror, I hardly recognized myself. "Oh, honey," Mom whispered, her eyes already wet with tears. "You look absolutely radiant." In the corner, Great Aunt Rose observed everything with her sharp gaze. When our eyes met in the mirror, she smiled, though something about her expression made me pause. It vanished so quickly, I almost wondered if I imagined it by noon. We were loading into cars for Riverside Manor. The ceremony was scheduled for 2 o'clock, with photos beginning at 1 o'clock. Everything was running right on time. The venue looked like a scene from a storybook. White roses and baby's breath decorated every corner. Chairs were lined in perfect rows facing the gazebo, where Maverick and I would exchange vows. The reception tent in the garden was set with round tables draped in crisp white linens and centerpieces that Penelope and I had carefully arranged the night before. "It's perfect," I whispered, taking it all in. "You're perfect," Penelope replied, squeezing my arm. "Maverick is going to lose his mind when he sees you." With an hour left before the ceremony, I settled into the bridal suite to touch up my makeup and steady my nerves. The photographer had gone to capture the groomsmen getting ready in another building. I caught myself wondering what Maverick was doing. Was he nervous? Excited? Did he feel the same calm certainty I did? As if every step of our lives had led to this moment. At 1:30, Penelope left to check the flowers and confirm the musicians were set. "I'll be right back," she promised, "and don't smudge that lipstick while I'm gone." At 1:45, my phone rang. It was Linda, the wedding coordinator. "Amy, sweetheart, we have a small issue," she said in her carefully steady voice. "The groom is running a few minutes late. Nothing major, just wanted to let you know." A flicker of worry stirred inside me. Late? Maverick was never late. Could something have happened? I reassured myself it was likely just traffic, or maybe a moment to collect himself. Weddings rarely started right on time. By 2 o'clock, Linda called again. "Amy, we'll need to delay a little longer. The groom still hasn't arrived, and we can't reach him on his phone." This time, worry tightened into a knot. "What do you mean you can't reach him? Where's his best man, his father?" Here, she explained, and trying to track him down. "I'm sure there's a logical explanation. I tried calling Maverick myself. Straight to voicemail. I sent a text, no answer. Where's Penelope?" I asked Emma, who hovered nearby, her expression tense. "She left to check on things 20 minutes ago," Emma replied, her face paled. "I haven't seen her since." The knot in my stomach grew tighter. I called Penelope straight to voicemail. By 2:15, the guests were restless, their murmurs drifting in from the ceremony space. My parents appeared in the doorway, their faces a mix of worry and frustration. "Sweetheart," Dad said gently, "we'll figure this out. There has to be a reason." But I was already moving, thoughts racing, both Maverick and Penelope missing, both unreachable. On my wedding day, the hotel, I said suddenly. Maverick had booked a room there the night before, keeping with tradition about not seeing the bride. Mom grabbed my arm. "Amy, maybe we should wait." "No," I said, sharper than I meant. I needed answers. Where was my fiancé? And why wasn't he here? The Millbrook Inn was only 5 minutes from the venue. I lifted my skirts and headed for the car, my family following behind me like anxious shadows. Great Aunt Rose appeared at my side, surprisingly quick for her age. "I'm coming with you," she said firmly. "Aunt Rose, you don't have to, child. I've lived long enough to know when something is wrong. You shouldn't face this alone." The drive felt endless, though it was only a few minutes. My hands trembled as I smoothed my dress, bracing myself for what I might discover. Maybe Maverick was unwell. Maybe there had been an emergency. Maybe his phone had died. Maybe. But deep down, in a place I didn't want to admit, I already knew. Before we go on, share in the comments which country you're watching from. We love hearing from our global family. And if this is your first time here, please subscribe. Your support helps us bring more unforgettable stories of life and betrayal. The Millbrook Inn was a historic bed and breakfast that had stood for over a century. Maverick had booked the honeymoon suite the night before, joking that he wanted a taste of luxury before our real honeymoon in the Bahamas. At the time, I thought it was thoughtful, even romantic. Now, standing in the lobby in my wedding dress, the elderly desk clerk watched me with pity and confusion. It felt cruel. "Room 237, she said softly, handing me the spare key. I asked, "4, the elevator is around the corner." My family gathered close as we rode up. Danny kept glancing at his phone, desperate for a message that would explain everything. Mom cried quietly, while Dad's jaw was clenched with anger he was trying to control for my sake. Great Aunt Rose placed a small hand on my arm. She didn't speak, but her presence was steadying. The hallway stretched before us, carpeted in burgundy, brass sconces, casting a warm glow. Room 237, the honeymoon suite, stood at the end with its heavy wooden door and brass plate. I paused, key in hand, listening. The hotel was still, but faint sounds came from inside. My heart pounded so hard I thought everyone could hear it. "Amy," Mom whispered, "maybe we should knock first." But I was already sliding the key into the lock, already turning the handle, already pushing open the door. The room was dim, curtains blocking most of the afternoon light. It took a moment for my eyes to adjust. The bed was a tangle of sheets and clothes. A man's suit, Maverick's wedding suit, was crumpled on the floor beside a bridesmaid's dress. A purple bridesmaid's dress, Penelope's dress. And in that bed lay Maverick and Penelope, naked, asleep, entangled like lovers who had shared the night. Her long dark hair spilled across his chest. His arm rested around her waist, holding her even in sleep. The sight crushed me. My breath left in a rush, the room spinning as if I might collapse. Behind me, Mom gasped. Dad swore under his breath. Danny made a sound like he'd been struck. I didn't move. I couldn't. I saw everything: the champagne bottle on the nightstand, Penelope's jewelry scattered on the dresser. The comfort between them that proved this wasn't their first time. The only question echoing in my head: how long? How long had they lied? How long had I been deceived? "Amy," Aunt Rose murmured, "come here." But I was frozen, staring at the wreckage of my life. This morning, I was a bride. I was happy. I was loved. Now I was nothing. A sound escaped me, half sob, half laugh. The bitter irony was almost laughable, almost. Maverick stirred, blinking against the light. Slowly, he realized where he wasn't, who was watching. His face drained of color. "Amy," he whispered, scrambling upright, waking Penelope. "Amy, I can explain." "Explain," I whispered, the word cutting through the silence like a blade. "Explain what? Explain what, exactly? Why you're in bed with my best friend on our wedding day. Why 100 guests are waiting in a church while you're here with my maid of honor." Penelope sat up, clutching the sheet. Her eyes were wide with panic. "Amy, please," she stammered. "It's not what it looks like," I laughed, the sound sharp and broken. "Not what it looks like. It looks exactly like betrayal. It looks like the two people I trusted most decided to lie and humiliate me. So please, Penelope, tell me what it really is." Neither of them had an answer. I turned toward my family. Mom was crying openly now. Dad looked like he was ready to explode. Danny's glare toward Maverick was filled with pure disgust. And Great Aunt Rose, she was watching me intently, with those sharp eyes, waiting to see what I would do next. "Call them," I said quietly. "What?" Mom asked. "Call them. Call Maverick's parents, his sister, his best man. Call everyone who's waiting for this wedding to begin." My voice grew stronger, steadier. "Tell them to come up here. They need to see this." "Amy," Maverick said, finally finding his voice. He scrambled for his clothes, panic written all over his face. "Please, let's talk about this in private." "In private," I repeated, coldness settling in my chest. "You want to talk privately after humiliating me in front of our entire town, after making me wait for a groom who was never coming?" I pulled out my phone and started making the calls myself. Double quotes, "Mrs. Bennett, it's Amy. I need you and Mr. Bennett to come to room 237 at the Millbrook Inn right now. Yes, I know the wedding is supposed to start. Just bring Katie and Tom with you." Maverick's mother answered on the second ring, her voice tight with confusion. "Amy, dear, where's Maverick? Everyone's asking. Room 237, Millbrook Inn. Come immediately. Bring everyone." I made 4 more calls. Maverick's father, his best man, the wedding coordinator, and my extended family still at the venue. "What are you doing?" Penelope whispered, clutching the sheet against her chest. I looked at her, this woman who had been my sister in everything but blood, the one who held my secrets, shared my dreams, and helped me plan the very wedding she was now tearing apart. "I'm making sure everyone sees who you really are," I said firmly. "Both of you." The next 20 minutes dragged endlessly. Maverick and Penelope rushed to get dressed, whispering frantically to each other, scrambling for an explanation that could never justify what they'd done. I sat by the window in my wedding dress, watching them panic. My family stood nearby, uncertain what to say. Great Aunt Rose sat calmly in the other chair, observing as if she were watching a performance unfold. Amy, please, Maverick begged. Let me explain. This just happened. Penelope stopped by. I suggested a drink before the wedding, and one thing led to another. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything, I repeated evenly. You slept with my maid of honor on our wedding day, and that means nothing. It was a mistake, Penelope added softly, her voice desperate. A terrible mistake. We regret it, Amy. You have to believe me. I never wanted this to happen, but it did, I said simply, and now everyone's going to know. At 2:45, the first knock came. Maverick's parents, his sister Katie, and his best man Tom entered. Their expressions shifted from confusion to shock, then horror, as they took in the scene. What is this? Mrs. Bennet whispered, hand at her throat. Maverick, what have you done? People arrived in waves, the wedding coordinator, frazzled and upset, my aunts and uncles, Maverick's groomsmen, even the photographer, standing in the hall with his camera hanging uselessly at his side. The room filled with gasps, angry voices, and Mrs. Bennet's sobs. Maverick's father looked as if he had aged 10 years in a matter of seconds. Katie stared at her brother in disbelief. How could you do this? She whispered. How could you do this to Amy on your wedding day? It was an accident, Maverick pleaded. A stupid, drunken mistake. Amy, please, we can fix this. Postpone the wedding. Go to counseling. Work it out. No. The word came out louder than I intended, silencing the room. I stood slowly, smoothing my dress, surrounded by everyone, wearing the gown I had dreamed about for months. I felt something shift inside me. The pain was sharp, but beneath it was clarity. You want to work through this? I asked Maverick directly. You want me to forgive you for sleeping with my best friend, pretend it never happened, and marry you anyway? Yes, he said quickly. Yes, exactly. Amy, I love you. This doesn't change that. Penelope means nothing. Stop. I raised my hand and his words died in his throat. Just stop talking. I turned to the room, meeting each pair of eyes. Maverick's family who once welcomed me as a daughter, my family torn between heartbreak and pride, the friends who had gathered to celebrate what they thought was the happiest day of my life. Understand this, I said clearly. This isn't just about today. It's about who these people really are. I walked to the dresser where Penelope's purse sat open. Inside was her phone and something else that froze me cold. A hotel key card. Not for this room. A different one. Penelope, I said, holding it up. What's this? Her face went pale. I don't know what you mean. I looked at the number on the card, then at the hotel logo. This key card is for the Riverside Hotel across town, room 412. I turned to Maverick. Wasn't that where you stayed last month when you claimed to be visiting your college friend? The silence was unbearable. And this one, I continued, pulling another key card from her purse. The Grand Hotel downtown, room 203. 3 weeks ago, when you told me you had a work conference. Maverick. Penelope was crying now, but I wasn't finished. How long? I asked quietly. How long has this been going on behind my back? Neither answered, but their faces revealed everything. Months, I said to myself, maybe longer. While I was planning our wedding, picking flowers, tasting cakes, and addressing invitations while I stayed awake at night, dreaming about our future, this was what they were doing. I looked around the room. My pain was reflected in the faces of those who had come to celebrate me, only to witness betrayal. But I wasn't humiliated anymore. I was angry. You want to know what the real tragedy is? I said, my voice steady. It's not just that my fiancé cheated, or that my best friend betrayed me. It's that neither of you had the courage to be honest. I faced Maverick. If you loved her, if you wanted her, you should have told me. You should have called off the wedding. You should have let me walk away with dignity. Instead, you let me plan a future with a man already committed elsewhere. You let me wake up today believing I was the luckiest woman alive. You let 100 people gather to witness a lie. Then I turned to Penelope. You helped me send out invitations. You held my hand when I was nervous. You told me I deserved happiness while you were taking it away. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't give me back the last year of my life, I replied. Sorry doesn't erase the humiliation of turning my wedding day into a public disaster. I looked around once more. Faces full of pity, anger, and shock stared back. In that moment, I knew exactly what needed to be done. Go back to the venue, I said calmly. Tell the guests what happened. Tell them there's no wedding today because the groom was too busy with the maid of honor. Amy, Mrs. Bennet said, her voice shaking. Think about your reputation. Think about your future. My reputation. I laughed freely this time. With respect, Mrs. Bennet, I'm not the one who should be worried about that. I walked to the window. Outside, it was a beautiful June day. Across town, 100 people waited for a bride and groom who would never arrive. The flowers would wither. The cake would go untouched. The photographer would pack up without capturing a single happy moment. But I was still here, still standing, and no longer a victim. Actually, I said, turning back to the room, I have a better idea. We're going to the venue, all of us. Amy, my mom said softly, maybe you should take some time. No. I shook my head. I've taken enough time. Those guests deserved the truth. Maverick stepped forward, panic on his face. You can't be serious. This will ruin everything. Everything is already ruined, I said. The only question is whether I let you control the story or I tell it myself. Great Aunt Rose rose to her feet, her voice strong. The girl's right. Better to face the music than let it play without you. I nodded, grateful. She was the only one who understood. Everyone out, I ordered. We're going to the venue, Maverick. Penelope, you're coming to— I'm not going anywhere, Penelope said, clutching her robe tighter. I can't face them. You should have thought about that before sleeping with my fiancé, I said coldly. Get dressed, both of you. You made this mess. Now help clean it up. The drive back to Riverside Manor felt surreal. I sat in the back of my father's car, still in my wedding dress, watching familiar streets pass by. Behind us, cars followed family, the wedding party. Even some guests pulled from the venue. My phone buzzed non-stop with calls and messages, but I ignored them. Explanations could wait. Are you sure about this, sweetheart? Dad asked from the driver's seat. Once you do this, there's no turning back. I'm sure, I said. And I was, for the first time in months, I felt certain. The venue looked exactly as we left it. Beautiful, perfect, ready for a celebration that would never happen. Guests gathered in the gardens, some scrolling on their phones, others chatting quietly in small groups. Confusion was clear on their faces as time passed without any sign of the bride or groom. Linda, the wedding coordinator, rushed over the moment she saw our cars pull up. Amy, thank goodness, what's going on? Where have you been? Gather everyone, I told her firmly. Guests, vendors, staff, I want them all in the ceremony space within 5 minutes. But the wedding, there isn't going to be a wedding, I said plainly, but there will be an announcement. Word spread quickly, and within minutes nearly 200 people filled the carefully arranged white chairs. Some looked worried, others frustrated at the delay. I stood at the back of the aisle, facing the friends, family, colleagues, and neighbors who had taken time from their lives to support me, people who deserved honesty. Maverick and Penelope were off to the side, both looking as if they wished the ground would swallow them. His parents stood nearby, Mrs. Bennet still in tears. Great Aunt Rose slipped up beside me. You ready, child? She asked. I nodded. I think so. Good. Remember, the truth has its own power. Don't let anyone take it from you. I walked down the aisle slowly, my dress brushing against the floor with each step. The same path I was supposed to take toward the man I loved. Instead, I was walking toward a microphone, toward the truth, toward whatever came next. When I reached the front, I turned to face the crowd. The murmurs fell silent, replaced only by birdsong and the faint hum of traffic. Thank you all for being here, I began, my voice carrying clearly. I know you're confused, and you deserve an explanation. I paused, scanning their expectant faces. At the back, Maverick and Penelope looked pale and shaken. There won't be a wedding today, I continued. Not because of cold feet, or some last-minute crisis, but because this morning I discovered that my fiancé and my maid of honor have been having an affair. The reaction was immediate: gasps, sharp whispers, people turning toward each other in disbelief. Someone in the back blurted out, "Oh my God." I waited for the noise to settle. I found them together in Maverick's hotel room barely an hour ago. And based on what I uncovered, this has been happening for months while I was planning what I thought would be the happiest day of my life. More shocked murmurs rippled through the room. All eyes turned toward Maverick and Penelope, who stood frozen. I'm not telling you this for sympathy, or even to embarrass anyone. I'm telling you because you deserve to know why there's no wedding today. You took time out of your lives to be here, and you deserve the truth. I took a steadying breath before continuing. But I also want you to know something else. This isn't the end of my story. It's just the close of one chapter, and honestly, one I'm glad to leave behind. Turning toward Maverick and Penelope, I went on. I've realized I don't want to marry someone who could lie to my face for months. I don't want to build a life with someone who could betray me with my best friend, and then show up to our wedding pretending everything was fine. I don't want to tie my future to someone who disrespects me enough to humiliate me in front of everyone I care about. My voice grew stronger with each word. Then I faced Penelope. And I've realized I don't need a friend who could smile at me while secretly tearing my life apart. Who could help me plan this wedding while actively destroying it? Who could look me in the eye and lie without hesitation? The crowd was silent now, hanging on every word. So here's what's going to happen, I said firmly. You're all welcome to stay for the reception. The food is paid for, the band is heralded. Honestly, I could use a celebration. We'll mark the fact that I just dodged the biggest mistake of my life. A ripple of laughter broke the tension, and for the first time that day, I felt a spark of relief. But Maverick and Penelope are not invited. In fact, I never want to see either of you again. You've shown me exactly who you are, and I believe you. Turning back to the guests, I added, thank you for being here today. Not for a wedding that didn't happen, but for witnessing the moment I chose myself over people who didn't deserve me. For seeing the moment I realized my happiness doesn't depend on someone else's approval or love. Faces in the crowd reflected a mix of tears, smiles, and lingering shocks, but above all, I saw respect. And to anyone who might find themselves in a situation like mine one day, remember this. You deserve better. Better than someone who makes you question your worth. Better than someone who lies. Better than someone who hurts you instead of being honest. I stepped back from the microphone, then leaned forward once more. Looking directly at Maverick, I held up my hand. Oh, and one last thing, the ring. I slipped the engagement ring from my finger. The same one he had saved months to buy, and the one I had admired daily for a year. I lifted it high for everyone to see. This is yours, I said, but I'm not giving it back. I turned and hurled the ring toward the pond, at the edge of the property. It caught the sunlight briefly before vanishing into the water with a quiet splash. The crowd reacted instantly. Some cheered, others gasped, a few even clapped. From the back, someone shouted, "You go, girl." And despite the chaos, I smiled. Maverick stepped forward, his face flushed with anger and humiliation. Amy, you can't just. I can, I interrupted, calmly, and I did. He glanced around, confronted by the stares of people who no longer looked at him with respect. His own family seemed to barely recognize him. This is insane, he argued, his voice desperate. You're being unreasonable. We can fix this. No, I answered firmly. We can't, and more importantly, I don't want to. Turning to Penelope, who was now crying openly, I spoke softly but clearly. I hope it was worth it. Whatever you thought you gained, I hope it was worth losing the one person who loved you most. Penelope's face collapsed in guilt. Amy, please, you don't understand. I never meant this to happen. I love you like a sister. Sisters don't betray each other. I cut her off. They don't smile to your face while tearing your life apart behind your back. You made your choice, Penelope. Now live with it. Facing the crowd, I felt lighter than I had in months. For the first time that day, real happiness entered my voice. Now, I said, who's ready to celebrate? What happened next stunned me. The guests didn't scatter or look away in discomfort. Instead, they rallied behind me. My cousin Emma was the first to step forward. She grabbed the microphone and declared, "You heard the bride. This is now the best dodged a bullet party in Millbrook history." The band, who had been waiting awkwardly nearby, suddenly launched into "I Will Survive." The irony wasn't lost on anyone, and laughter spread through the crowd. Maverick and Penelope tried to slip away quietly, but the silence that followed them was harsher than any words. Each face they passed carried its own judgment. Before leaving, Mrs. Bennet stopped in front of me, her eyes swollen from tears, her expression weighed down with years. "Amy," she whispered, "I'm so sorry. I thought I raised him better than this." "You did," I told her gently. "This isn't your fault. You're a wonderful woman, and you raised Katie to be amazing. Sometimes people just choose less than they could be." She hugged me tightly, whispering, "You're going to be just fine, better than fine." Katie, Maverick's sister, lingered. She had always felt more like a close friend than a future sister-in-law. Her eyes shone with tears. I swear, Amy, I had no idea. I'm ashamed of him. I don't even recognize who he is anymore. He's still your brother, I said, embracing her. That won't change. But you don't have to excuse his actions. I never would, she replied fiercely. What he did is unforgivable. As the afternoon unfolded, something unexpected happened. What should have been the worst day of my life turned into something entirely different. The reception that was meant to mark my marriage became a celebration of resilience, freedom, and refusing to accept less than I deserved. Guests began sharing their own stories, near misses, betrayals, and escapes from relationships that weren't right. My great-uncle spoke about nearly marrying a woman who was already someone else's wife. A co-worker recalled discovering her fiancé was secretly stealing from her savings. Someone raised a glass to Amy for showing us what true strength looks like. To Amy, the crowd echoed. I laughed, really laughed, surrounded by people who valued me, supported me, and reminded me of my worth, even when I struggled to see it. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in soft pinks and golds, my great-aunt Rose joined me. How are you holding up, child? She asked. Better than I imagined, I admitted. I thought I'd be broken. Instead, I paused, taking in the joyous scene. Instead, I feel free, like I can finally breathe again. She nodded with knowing eyes. That's because you were settling, sweetheart. You thought you had to accept less than you deserved, but you don't. Was it that obvious? I asked, to someone who's watched people for 82 years. Yes, she smiled gently. You're kind, Amy. Sometimes too kind. You see the good in people even when they're showing you their worst. That's a gift, but it can also hurt you. So, what do I do now? I asked. You live, she replied simply. You live your life for yourself, not for the expectations of others. You discover what makes you happy, what gives you energy, and what makes you proud of who you are. And from that moment on, you never settle for less than you deserve. As the evening went on, I kept replaying her words in my mind. For over a year, maybe longer, had been so focused on the wedding, on the idea of being married, and on meeting everyone else's expectations, that I had completely lost sight of what I actually wanted. Did I truly want to marry Maverick, or did I just want to be married? Had I been so wrapped up in the picture-perfect fantasy that I ignored the reality of who he really was? Looking back now, the signs had been there. Subtle things I brushed aside. The way he sometimes spoke down to me in front of his friends, how he started spending more time away from home, how distant he became in the weeks before the wedding. I blamed it on wedding stress, on the pressure of planning such a big event. I told myself it was normal that every couple went through rough patches. But maybe it wasn't normal. Maybe it was him pulling away because he had already given his heart somewhere else. And Penelope. How had I missed it? How had I not seen what was happening right in front of me? Yet even as those questions ran through my head, I knew I didn't want to waste energy on them anymore. What was done. The real question was, what comes next? Danny appeared beside me, a little tipsy and grinning. Best wedding reception ever, and there wasn't even a wedding. I laughed, pulling my younger brother into a hug. You're drunk. I'm celebrating, he insisted. Celebrating the fact that my sister is a total badass who just gave the performance of a lifetime. That speech, the ring toss, the way you completely owned the moment, it was legendary. He shook his head, smiling with pride. Amy, I've never been prouder to be your brother. His words hit me harder than I expected. Danny and I had always been close, but he was never one for big emotional statements. Seeing the genuine pride in his eyes made something warm spark inside me. Thanks, Danny, I whispered. I mean it, he said, suddenly serious despite the alcohol. What you did today took real courage and strength. I want you to know I've got your back. We all do. I looked around the room. The celebration was still in full swing. My parents danced slowly, holding each other and smiling at me with so much love it made my throat tighten. My cousins and friends were laughing, creating new memories to replace the ones that had been spoiled. Even some of Maverick's own friends had stayed, quietly making it clear where their loyalty stood. These people loved me. They supported me. They saw my value, even when I couldn't see it myself. For the first time as an adult, I felt completely loved for exactly who I was. 3 months later, I was in my new apartment, a cozy downtown one-bedroom I had found and rented on my own when my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but something made me answer. Amy, it's Penelope. I nearly hung up. I hadn't spoken to her since that day. I hadn't seen her in town or heard where she had gone. What do you want, Penelope? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. I wanted to apologize, she said, her voice small and unsteady. I know it's too late. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I had to try. I stayed silent, refusing to make it easy for her. I've been going to therapy, she went on, trying to understand why I did what I did, why I hurt you so badly. And I realized, I was jealous of you. Jealous of me. My surprise slipped into my voice. You had everything I wanted, she admitted. You were confident, secure, in your relationship, happy. And I felt like I was stuck while everyone else was moving forward. When Maverick started confiding in me, telling me about his doubts, the words hit me like a slap. He told me he wasn't sure he was ready, she said softly, that he felt trapped. And instead of telling him to talk to you, instead of being a real friend, I encouraged it. I made him believe his doubts were valid, that maybe he was settling too. I closed my eyes, feeling a sharp ache, not for Maverick. I was long past him, but for the version of me who had been blind to the truth. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Because you deserve to know. All of it. And because I want you to understand that none of this was about you not being enough. It was about me being broken and him being a coward. I sat quietly, letting her words sink in. Are you still together? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. No, she said quickly. We ended soon after the wedding. When you build a relationship on betrayal, it doesn't last. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I'm not calling for forgiveness, she continued. I know I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry. And that what I did was unforgivable. You're right, I said flatly. It was. After a pause, she added quietly, I heard you're doing well, that you got promoted at the school, that you're happy. I am, I said, and for the first time, I realized it was completely true. I really am. When the call ended, I sat in my living room for a long time, reflecting on the conversation. A year ago, hearing from Penelope would have left me in pieces. 6 months ago, it would have ruined my day. Now, it only felt like closing a door that had been left slightly open. Life had shifted in ways I never expected. I'd been promoted at the school, now leading the kindergarten department with my own classroom and a team of teachers. I'd begun volunteering at the local women's shelter, helping others rebuild after difficult relationships. I'd even taken up painting, something I'd always wanted to try but never had the time for back when I was planning a wedding. I'd reconnected with old friends, traveling to 3 different states to see people I'd lost touch with. I'd read more books in 3 months than I had in the last 3 years. I'd learned how to enjoy being on my own without feeling lonely. Most importantly, I'd started trusting myself again, listening to my instincts, valuing my own happiness, instead of constantly putting everyone else first. My phone buzzed. A text from Danny. Family dinner Sunday. Mom's making your favorite. I smiled as I replied. Wouldn't miss it. Another text followed, this time from Emma. Girls' night Friday. That new wine bar downtown. Absolutely, I typed back. Then came one more message from an unfamiliar number. Hi Amy, this is David from the coffee shop. I know this is a little out of the blue, but would you like to have dinner sometime? No pressure if not. David, the kind barista I'd been chatting with for weeks after moving downtown. He was thoughtful, funny, and never made me feel like I had to be anyone other than myself. I stared at the text, feeling something that might have been excitement. A year ago, I would have said no, convincing myself it was too soon, that I wasn't ready. But I was ready. Not because I'd forgotten the past, but because I'd learned from it. I knew my worth now. I typed back, I'd love to. When were you thinking? His reply came almost instantly. How about Saturday? There's a small Italian place I've been wanting to try. Perfect. It's a date. Setting my phone down, I caught my reflection in the mirror. I looked different than I had a year ago. Happier, more confident, at peace. I looked like someone who knew her value. I thought of Great Aunt Rose's words from that painful but freeing day. Now you live your life for yourself. And that's exactly what I was doing. Choosing for myself, building a life that was mine, surrounded by people who respected me. I was looking forward to the future, not because of who might be part of it, but because of who I was becoming. The girl in the wedding dress who once watched her world collapse was gone. In her place stood a woman who knew she was enough on her own, a woman who would never settle for less than she deserved, a woman who understood that sometimes the hardest experiences lead to the greatest growth. Smiling at my reflection, I lifted an imaginary glass and whispered to Amy for choosing herself. The Millbrook Community Center buzzed with laughter, balloons, and chatter as proud parents gathered for the kindergarten end-of-year celebration. I stood at the front, watching my students perform the play we had practiced for weeks. Miss Amy, little Emma, tugged on my dress. "Did you see me remember all my lines?" "I did," I said, crouching down. "You were perfect." As parents collected their children, I felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This was where I belonged, teaching, guiding, watching kids grow. It was joy rooted not in approval, but in purpose. Amy, my principal, Mrs. Rodriguez, approached with a smile. "Wonderful job today. The parents loved it." "Thank you," I replied. "The kids worked so hard." She nodded. "I wanted to let you know, the district office called. They're launching a new early childhood development initiative and need someone to lead it. I recommended you." My heart skipped. It was the kind of opportunity I had dreamed of, though I never thought it would arrive so soon. "I'd love to hear more," I said. "I'll arrange a meeting for next week," she continued. "Amy, you've really grown into yourself this year. Whatever happened in your personal life seems to have unlocked something powerful in you professionally." As she walked away, her words stayed with me. She was right. The past year had transformed me in ways I couldn't have imagined. Ready to go, David appeared at my side, patient as always. We'd been together for 8 months, now slowly, carefully, building something strong and real. He was nothing like Maverick. Where Maverick had been all charm and flash, David was steady and genuine. Where Maverick made me feel like I had to be perfect, David made me feel like I already was. Where Maverick hid behind secrets, David was open and honest. "How was the play?" he asked as we walked to his car. "Perfect chaos," I laughed. Little Tommy forgot his lines and just started inventing a story about dinosaurs. We drove through downtown Millbrook, passing familiar places that had once marked special moments. The coffee shop where we had our first real conversation, the bookstore where we shared our second date, and all the other spots that had become part of our story. As we pulled into my driveway, I turned to him. "I have something to tell you." His face showed concern. "Is everything all right?" "Better than all right," I smiled. "I might be getting a big promotion, district level." His expression lit up. "Amy, that's incredible. Tell me everything." We sat on the porch while I explained the opportunity, what it meant for my career, and how both excited and nervous I felt. He listened with complete focus, something that still surprised me. No judgment, just genuine interest. When I finished, he said, "You'll be amazing. They're lucky to have you." "You really think so?" "I know so," he replied, gently tracing circles on my palm. "You're the strongest, most capable person I know. Look at what you've accomplished this year." I thought about it, my promotion at school, the volunteer work at the shelter, the friendships I'd built, and the relationship with David that was honest and real. Most importantly, the peace I'd found within myself. "It's funny," I said. "A year ago, I thought my life was over. I thought losing Maverick and Penelope meant losing everything. But now, I realize I didn't lose anything. I gained everything. I gained myself." We sat in silence, watching the sunset over the neighborhood where I grew up. Tomorrow, I would call Mrs. Rodriguez and set up the meeting for the promotion. Tomorrow, I'd move one step closer to the future I was building. But tonight, I was content sitting here with someone who loved me exactly as I was, in the life I had created from the ruins of my old dreams. My phone buzzed with a text from Great Aunt Rose, who had been keeping in touch since the wedding. "Saw the article about your kindergarten program in the paper. So proud of you. You're blooming, just as you should." Smiling, I typed back, "Thank you for everything you taught me that day." Her reply came quickly. "You taught yourself, child. I only reminded you of what you already knew." As stars appeared in the sky, I thought back to the girl in the wedding dress who had stood in that hotel doorway. She had been terrified of being alone, convinced her worth depended on being chosen. Now I knew better. The most important choice isn't being chosen, it's choosing yourself. "What are you thinking about?" David asked softly. "Just how different everything is now. How different I am. Different how? I used to think happiness was something that happened to you, something you had to wait for or find in someone else. Now I know it's something you create for yourself. He squeezed my hand. That's what I love about you, your strength, your independence, your understanding of your own worth. It took me time to learn it, I admit it. The best lessons usually do. Later that night, after David left, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back was confident, calm, and genuinely happy, so, unlike the anxious bride who had woken up in the same house a year earlier. I thought briefly about Maverick and Penelope, then realized I didn't care anymore. They were part of the past, with no power over my present or future. My thoughts shifted to the women at the shelter, many of them just beginning their own journeys, and to my students who were learning each day how capable they truly were. I thought about all the people still waiting for others to validate their worth, not realizing they were already complete. Here's what I had learned. You don't need anyone else's permission to be happy, successful, or proud of yourself. The best revenge isn't hurting those who hurt you. It's building a life so fulfilling and authentic that their betrayal no longer matters. The best revenge is becoming so fully yourself that you wouldn't want to be anyone else. As I turned off the lights and settled into bed, I felt only gratitude for the pain that forced me to grow, for the betrayal that set me free, for the strength I had found in my darkest moments, and for the life I was now living on my own terms. A life filled with people who saw my worth and reflected it back. I fell asleep smiling, excited for tomorrow, for the promotion interview. For the future, I was shaping one choice at a time. The girl who once believed she needed someone to complete her was gone. In her place stood a woman who was whole, strong, and exactly who she was meant to be, unstoppable. 6 months later, I received the promotion. A year after that, I was featured in a national education magazine for my innovative programs. David and I moved in together, but only after many conversations about maintaining independence and supporting each other's goals. I never saw Maverick or Penelope again. Though I heard they'd both left town, I wished them well. Their betrayal had been the spark for the best thing that ever happened to me, learning to love and value myself. Sometimes people ask if I regret not marrying that day, if I wonder what might have been. The truth is, I don't. I can't regret the path that led me to myself. The wedding that never happened became the beginning of the life I was always meant to live, and that life turned out more beautiful than any fairy tale I could have imagined.